Then you can start doing your chest compressions. Does that make sense? What happened to the lady on the airplane yesterday? There was a lady on an airplane that had a really bad day yesterday. What happened? She died. Why did she die? Anybody know what happened to the airplane yesterday? How's an airplane engine work? The big jet, how's it work? Anybody know? There are big blades in the front that turn really fast, that suck air in. How fast are they spinning? Fast. One of the blades broke. It gets worse. The blade broke, going very fast, tore through the rest of the engine, destroying the front part of the engine. So now you have massive amounts of metal coming up out of the engine. We're on the left side, the port side. One of those pieces of the engine hit the window she was sitting by. So what did the window do? Shattered. True or false? That's a strong window. Yeah, broke it anyway. What's the pressure difference when you're at 35,000 feet? What's the pressure? Yeah. What's the pressure differential between the inside of the plane and the outside of the plane? Very. So which way did the air go? High to low. Second law of thermodynamics. Out. She got sucked out the window.
Oh.
Not all the way because it's a small window. The whole fuselage didn't blow. Just the window blew. So you had an explosion right, true or false? When you're sitting in an airplane by the window, you're right by the window.
Yeah.
She was alive, then she was dead. She didn't even know it hit her. Window blows, sucked out, blocks the window. I know, air pressure drops, the mass drops, everybody gets their phones out and starts recording stuff, right? They pull her, plane descends, because all the alarms are going off in the cockpit, plane descends, they pull her back into the cockpit, and what they have to do to her?
CPR.
They did CPR on her for 20 minutes. After 20 minutes, they're not getting a pulse, they're still not getting a pulse, so they decided to terminate. Make sense? Why'd she die? Most likely cause is what?
Head trauma.
Blunt force trauma to the head. Probably snapped her neck. The force was so fast it sucked her out. She probably only got up to her shoulders.
Wow.
Yeah, you know. Imagine the randomness of that. She may not even need to have been on that flight, and she just happened to get that seat, and that piece of metal just happened to fly that direction and hit the window and break it. This was a long time ago. There was a airliner was flying to Hawaii, I think. The whole fuselage ripped off, and a small section up at the front. The people who were not strapped in, what'd they do? Yeah, I don't really fly anymore. I don't really care for it. Yeah, I'll take an aisle seat, please.
No more window seats for me.
Yeah, bad day.
Oh,
Mom, 2 kids.
wow.
Oh my.
Yep, randomness. Why'd the thing break? Why'd the fan, right out of the gate they're already saying the fan blade had structural integrity problems, so it just snapped. But what caused it to snap? You learned it several weeks ago. It was one of the laws. Second law of thermodynamics. Entropy, things get more disorganized over time. Oh, that piece of metal broke. Vertebral column. I know, bad day. All of this, it's the first airline fatality in the United States on a jetliner in like 6 or 7 years. So that's a pretty good, true or false? Everybody else on the airplane survived. Yeah, so everybody else had a good day.
I mean, in a way.
In a way. Vertebral column, 5 zones. The neck is the cervical. The parts associated with the zone associated with the ribs is the thoracic. Then the lumbar is the lower back. The fused part is the what? Sacrum. And then the tailbone's the
Coccyx.
coccyx. You have to know numbers. There are 7 cervicals. $12 thoracic. 5 lumbar. The way you remember this is you have breakfast at 7, you have lunch at what?
12.
12, dinner at
5.
5. 7 plus 5 is
12.
12. Okay? The significance of this is when you're talking about spinal cord injuries. Your patient's coming in for physical therapy. They had a complete break at L4. What does that mean? Fourth lumbar. So true or false? They're in a wheelchair and they're able to push themselves. Why? Because where's the break at? Way low down. So everything below that's gone, but the arms and chest are still functional. Your patient's coming in, they have a break at C6. Which would you rather have, a C6 break or a L4?
L4.
L4. Makes sense? The higher up you go, the worse it is. That's where you're talking about the numbers. T3, C1, L4. Makes sense? Okay. Cervicals, 7. The first two, C1 and C2, they have specific names. C1 is called the atlas. C2 is called the axis. They have very specific functions. In Greek and Roman mythology, who's Atlas? Anybody know? No? Ever see a statue of a guy holding up a big ball or a globe?
Yeah.
That's Atlas. What's he holding up? The world. C1, the Atlas, what's it holding up? Your head. Okay? When you articulate the Atlas, your head nods up and down like this. C2 is the axis. The earth rotates on its axis, so that articulation is a movement left and right. Make sense? Cervical, thoracic, lumbar, sacrum, coccyx. Why is the sacrum fused? Why are the sacrum vertebrae fused? They're associating with which other parts of your body? Pelvic girdle. True or false? All these bones here are fused. Why? Strength, support, fuse those vertebrae there. Make sense? On a whale, those bones are not fused. Why are they not fused on a whale?
They moved their tail.
The tail, what do they use their tail for?
Swimming.
Swimming. So there's more of a curve, so they can get more force when they swim. Make sense? Vertebrae. Individual vertebrae, you gotta learn the different parts. Body is the big bony chunk. That's where the cartilage is in between. So you slip a disc, it comes out between those two things. Makes sense? Body. Okay? Spinal foramen. That's the hole here. What's going through the spinal foramen? Spinal cord. Makes sense? Spinous process. That's the knob coming out in the middle. Different sizes, different lengths, different angles, but they're all doing the same thing. Spinous process. Then you get these two things sticking out the sides. Those are the transverse process. What's the purpose of these processes? What's the purpose? No. What's the purpose of the spinous process and transverse process? What's the purpose of any process you've learned so far? What? Yeah, muscle attachment. How many vertebrae are there? 7 plus 12 plus 5. I'm going to stop right there. 7 plus 24. 24 times 3 processes. What's 24 times 3? Like 76? Something like that? True or false? There's lots of muscles attached to your back.
True.
Yeah. Makes sense? The other two parts you don't have to know. Superior and inferior notch. I won't test you on those. But what they are, the superior notch is where I'm articulating with the vertebrae above it, and the inferior notch is where you're articulating with the vertebrae below it. Any questions on the vertebrae? Okay, rib. Open your box up again. All you have to know is this is a rib. You don't have to learn the parts. I don't care. I got other more questions. Okay, rib. Purpose. How many ribs are there? Sorry. Which vertebrae do ribs associate with? Thoracic. How many of those are there? So how many ribs do you have? 12. 12 on each side. What's the purpose of the rib? Protect the lungs. It's a roll cage. True or false? The brain is completely encased in armor.
True.
True. Not so much the heart and the lungs. Bone is heavy, so we drop the weight. So while putting those spaces in, we can drop the weight. We still have good protection, right? Okay. We'll go over the true, false, and floating concept. The trues are the top ones where they have their own individual cartilage attachment point. Okay? The false are the lower ones where we're sharing a cartilage attachment point. And the floaters are the last two where there's no cartilage attachment point. Make sense? Blunt force trauma to the chest, good or bad? Why? We're going to break the ribs. True or false? Hold on, let me back up. In my hammer story with my thumb, I broke my thumb. It's swollen and the bone's broken, so how do I treat that medically? I'm going to put a splint on it. I'm not going to move my bone, so therefore it heals properly. Oh, blunt force trauma, because I fell, I broke 2 ribs. I just won't breathe for a while, right? Doesn't work that way. Breaking the ribs is bad because you always have to move them when you breathe. So what happens to your patient's breathing? It's labored, it's shallow, depending, they don't want to breathe, but they got to, so they're not respiring very well. Break it hard enough, now instead of just having a crack going through it, I've got chunks of things breaking off. I can potentially pierce a lung, come down in the spleen, maybe down in the liver. Does that make sense? Okay. Any questions on ribs? That's today's material. Any questions on today's stuff? So again, let's go over this. What do you have next week?
Next
Time
time.
does it start?
2:30.
You come in, you put your books and coats aside, you spread out. There will be 40 questions. The first 5 questions are kidney questions. Everything else is bone stuff. There will be questions in these cubbies. There's a question here, there's a question there, a question back in the hood. You will get a full minute per station. You won't need it, but I'm giving you the full minute. Once the test is done, I collect the test, like I've done before. I walk through and tell you what the answers are. I tell you I enjoy working with you guys. I tell you if you're repeating, I have the same 3 classes next semester on Wednesdays, 8 o'clock, 11 o'clock, and 2 o'clock. If you need to repeat, you want to sign up again. I then immediately sit down over there in that corner and I start grading. I gave you all your points as of last week out of 90. So if you want to stick around at the end of the test next week, I'll grade them in the order. There aren't too many people in here, so it won't take me very long. You can walk out of here next week and know exactly what you got in this class, because I'll have them graded over there. The rule is, as it is written in your lab book, that's the answer you put down on your answer sheets. Does that make sense? Okay, I have a practice test set up. Down this whole row here, and in this cubby hole, I got bones with orange pieces of tape. For this practice test, I want to know what all the parts are where the tape is. On the real exam, I'm going to try to alternate bone, part, bone, part, bone, part. It's not exactly equal, but I do the best that I can. So when you're done studying for a little bit, because we've got basically 2 hours here. It doesn't take too long to get through this material. But you've got another 2 hours to get you studying here, which I would recommend. Take a practice test, looking for the orange tape. There. Make sense? Yeah, I'll get my answer sheet or my attendance sheet set up here. I have to go use the restroom.